Okay, everybody, welcome once again to the Meat and Potato Show, conservative talk and awesome rock. And once again, we have the great honor of interviewing another great author of the book, Mike Isenberg, The Full Asylum. It's so great to have another great author on this show. On the Meat and Potato Show, we have had the pleasure since 2008 of only having about a dozen and a half authors, and that's a small number over those numbers of years. This is what makes having authors onto the show so great, that we get to talk to them, we get to talk about their books, we get to talk about them and their purpose in the liberty movement, in the Tea Party movement, and taking back our government, because every single author that I've ever interviewed on this show has been just basically about, writing about what is wrong. What is wrong with our country? What is wrong and going on with our government? And the way we need to take everything back. And this is a great book of fiction. But I've been reading the bio on here, and I cannot wait to get this guy on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, Mike Isenberg, author of the book Full Asylum. Michael, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Chris.
So, tell us, quite literally, about the book, how you started writing it, because I saw in the stuff that you sent me that this has been going on for quite some time, 2013, 2014. You've been working on this, and it only finally got published. And we can talk about the publishing company, which I guess is your company. We'll talk about that in a minute, but go ahead. Tell us about the book. Tell us about how this whole thing got started.
Well, the book is called Full Asylum, and it's about what the country will look like if we stay on the path of big government that we're on. And it's a future where there are government creeps ready to kick in your door if you don't fall into line. But since Ayn Rand and Glenn Beck and George Orwell already did the grim version of that story, I wrote it as a comedy. In addition to kicking in your door, they'll also ban you from drinking soda. So if you really want to impress your date in this future world, you got to come up with a dusty old bottle of Coca-Cola. That's illegal.
With their name on
I won't go into what I did with airport security, but it involves a privacy curtain and a rubber glove. And
oh, my goodness.
the story is from the point of view of a software engineer. His name is Gimbal O'Hare, and he has the misfortune of living in this future, and it kind of pushes him over the edge, and he gets it into his head that he's James Bond. And when he gets it into his head that he's James Bond, he's pushing back against big government and fighting back, and car chases and shootouts and beautiful women follow.
Sounds like a plan for a movie.
I think it would make a great movie. If you know any producers, please introduce me.
If we find any, we'll send them your way, Mike.
Well, you had talked about Ayn Rand and the Atlas Shrugged. I thought the third version of that thing was just. I watched part 1, part 2, and then I was like, oh, part 3, oh, here we go. And then I watched it, I was like, wait a minute, did this thing go off the rails?
Yeah, exactly.
The entire thing went right off the rails.
It did.
Go ahead, Mike.
That third version, the third part, there are a lot of things wrong with it, and you can find lists of it on people's blogs on and their reviews. But you know what? In spite of everything that was wrong with that, I still loved it. They had some great scenes in it, some great pictures. So.
How far off the rails from Ayn Rand's books did it go?
It wasn't so much that it departed from the book as stuff that they left out and stuff that just wasn't done well. I mean, you've got like the spectacular explosion of the Taggart Bridge near the end in the original book, and they just did that with the stills of before and after,
Yeah, it's like, and by the way, the bridge blew up. It's like, yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
So anyway, but we're digressing here. I want to talk about your book.
You asked me how I came up with my book.
Yeah. it's so great that you come up with a piece. It. I've read a lot of sci-fi. I've read a lot of political stuff that goes into fiction. I love the way many authors take take liberty on what's actually really happening and then extrapolate it onto a plausible scenario like you did in your book. And and so how much research did you do, and how close are you in extrapolating your plausible scenarios into actual stuff that's going on?
Well, Glenn Beck had a similar problem when he was writing the Overton window. He said he'd write something outrageous, and then the government would go do it. So he'd have to come up with something even more outrageous. But one thing that I based a lot of it on was the old Soviet Union and the things that happened there. And for example, in the Soviet Union, they had a crime called economic sabotage. And of course, this crime was so vague that anything that you did that the government didn't like, they could declare this as economic sabotage and put you in jail, possibly in front of the firing squad. So, I took that idea out of Soviet Russia and imagined, well, what would it look like if we had a crime of economic sabotage in America, and tax accountants were being thrown in jail because finding deductions keeps money away from the treasury, and that's sabotage.
Yeah, but aren't we seeing that today? Isn't that already happening?
Well, and we're seeing that. We're seeing what with the First Amendment and the warped ideas on free speech and hate speech.
It's funny that you should bring that up because I think that it's questionable whether such a thing as economic sabotage would be constitutional. And in my book, I had it go through the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, "Oh yes, this is constitutional." And the words that the Supreme Court used in my book, I stole from a real-life Supreme Court case, which was the one where they said campaign finance laws were okay, and how the fact that government had an interest in this overrode the First Amendment. And so, yeah, I think very much what you're saying is true, that in many ways this is already occurring. I told you a bit about the soda before. My book actually came out before Mayor Bloomberg banned that in New York City.
When I saw that.
Actually, the very day my book came out.
Yeah,
wonderful human being.
I know, a wonderful human being.
Not.
When I saw that you wrote that, I was like, here we got the soda thing. It's like, oh my God, that's right. Now, Mike, okay, we have George Orwell, we have Aldous Huxley, Ayn Rand, yourself. I'm a big science.
In that company.
Oh, please, no! I'm gonna actually.
You deserve to be there.
I'm gonna actually put you in a few more. Larry Niven, great science fiction writer. Isaac Asimov, great science fiction writer. Heinlein, another great science fiction writer. All of them propose these utopian ideas that go askew, that go awry. And your book is no less than that. We've seen many writings like this. And many people will read books like yours, Heinlein, Asimov, everyone else, and they'll say, oh yeah, that's a great story, that's a great story. But I've read all these books, and here's the thing. This is where we are now today, aren't we, sir? Go ahead. This is where we are.
Well, I don't think that's where we are yet, but I think it's where we are on the way. And, that's why these people, as well as me, wrote their books as a warning, that if we don't do a correction, this is where we're headed. And I think, we need that warning in every generation.
Do you have any idea?
So, like Ayn Rand, I'd say I wrote my book in the hopes of preventing it from coming true.
Go ahead.
would you happen to have any thought of a time frame for what you're saying in the book is happening?
I set it roughly about 10 years in the future.
That sounds about right.
That's scary as hell.
That sounds about right.
When I tell that to people when I'm promoting, and a lot of them will say, "Oh, it's going to be way faster than that."
No, yeah, but here's the thing, Mike. This brings me back to my question a second ago about these other authors. 10 years. Yeah, you say about 10 years. It's already happening. I've looked into at least the bibliography of your book, and I'm sorry that I didn't get a chance to read the book yet. Definitely, that's on my list. But from what I can gather from the premise that you're putting together, and I've read enough science fiction, I've read enough science fact to know that you are spot on to practically everything that all these other authors that I just mentioned a moment ago have already written about, and we are already there. I know you say it's about 10 years, and I can understand that you want to hedge your bets here. I happen to disagree. I happen to think that we're already there. I'm reading a book right now, Technocracy. It's absolutely scary. And when I look at what's going on, Mike, you and I have met each other through the Tea Party movement and the Liberty movement, and we know what's going on out there. We've been to enough events out there to see exactly what's going on. And so your book that you wrote as a piece of fiction, I'm sorry, Mike, but I see that. I see that already happening here. Please, sir, contradict me, or either that buttress what I just said.
Well, here's part of my thinking. Because you're right, some of it is already happening. I talked about the restrictions on free speech a minute ago. And when you get up and tell people that, a lot of times they will look at you as if you're from Mars.
Yeah.
And, I think in this country, it's not that people are against them, it's that they don't even understand it. So they don't understand, so they can't understand that it's slipping away from them. So what I tried to do is hope, if you felt that if you could tell a story in fiction and get people at a gut level and an emotional level, you can a lot of times be a lot more persuasive than if you just get up and make a speech and issue warnings. If the reader is sympathetic to the character, if they get caught up in the story, that can be a way to get the message out, that would be in addition to, which supplements what many other people.
I remember feeling that way when I read George Orwell's 1984. I remember feeling that way. And here's the interesting thing. Listen, folks, on the Meat and Potato Show, that I remember reading those books as a young kid, and I used to be a liberal Democrat, and I remember reading those books thinking, oh, the right wing, oh, the Republicans, oh, the right wing's gonna come and take all these rights away from us, and this is what we're gonna, if we stand behind a right-wing government, a conservative government, and oh my God, these people are terrible. I soon came to realize, as I grew older, that I was completely, utterly wrong. That it's actually George Orwell was talking about a left-wing government. He was talking about a leftist type of government. But the reason why I believed that I was believing in a right-wing government taking over is because of what I had absorbed in my education and what I absorbed through listening to media and everything else. It only came through time and my own growing up and going out in the world and trying to make my life that I realized that I was utterly, completely wrong. Now, here's the thing, Mike. We're on the verge of Common Core. It's here, it's now, it's in our face. These are the things that our children are going to be learning. They're going to be indoctrinated into this concept, like I just said, that, oh, don't, it's the right wing. Oh, you gotta hate America. Oh, you gotta hate this. Oh, these conservatives and these constitutionalists. Oh, they believe in this freedom. Oh, and then this slavery and yada yada. They lump all this stuff on, which is what I believed as a young kid. It only was through time that I grew up and moved beyond that. Your book, Full Asylum, talks about this weird amalgamation of a future that we live in. Isn't that what Common Core is going to introduce and going to indoctrinate to our children? That we do live in this now bizarro world of America where everything is America is the worst country in the world. Take it from here, sir. I think you see where I'm going here.
Absolutely, and you know, I actually portray this in my book. I have an example where a history teacher is trying to teach his class about the Industrial Revolution, and you know, and what he's trying to get across is there were pros and cons, and the school board won't allow it. You know, oh, the pro side of the Industrial Revolution is not in the Common Core. You're not allowed to teach that. So absolutely, I think this is something to be concerned about. And you know, if I wasn't busy trying to, you know, revolutionize the publishing industry, and if I had a great deal of means, I would definitely be putting some of that into revolutionizing the education industry and getting more conservatives, you know, into classrooms and into the teaching profession.
Let me stop you there. Give my audience a little history of yourself, why you wrote the book, a little bit. Just give us some history of Mike Isenberg, your work in the Liberty Movement. You and I have run across each other many times through T-Pop. So just give my audience a little history.
My father was a small business owner, and that's what kind of started me in the Liberty Movement, even as a child, because like many small business owners, you know, he put me to work in the family business, you know, when I was, people think I'm making this up, but I was 3 years old when they put me to work.
Oh, that's
course.
common. That's
No, that's
common.
fine.
That's common for
Yeah,
families, for
and
family businesses.
the parents said they believe in child labor. So growing up in the business, you know, I saw what a burden regulation was. And I also, you know, developed a certain amount of disdain for people who didn't pull their own weight, you know, the way you're expected to do in capitalism. So, you know, I grew up very anti-regulation, very skeptical about welfare and so on, and that's sort of how I got my start. And I was active in politics in the 1980 election, and then after Reagan won, I thought, okay, this is it. Liberty won. We're all set for my lifetime. I can go off and do other things and move on. And
then they
like
stuck
many
Bush
people on the right side of the aisle, I had a rather rude awakening in 2008. Well, even before that, because there were a lot of things that the Bush administration did that like warrantless wiretaps, you know, that concerned me.
Right.
And then of course in 2008 we had the election of Mr. Obama, and I said, okay, I guess I gotta dive back in again, and I actually started running a website to promote Scott Brown's candidacy. Although
I worked on that campaign.
he had some disappointment there. Then I got involved in the Tea Party. As far as how my book got started, that really didn't start as a political book. It started as a James Bond character. Because, you know, I was a huge fan of James Bond growing up, and there's in all the James Bond movies, where Bond goes back to his hotel room, and there's a beautiful woman in his bed. Now, I stayed at a lot of hotels.
You and me both. I saw that.
All
in
three
the-
of us.
Here
All
we
three
go.
of us.
I know what you're gonna say. Wouldn't it be nice?
Never
Wouldn't
happened
it
to
be
me,
nice?
not even once. I thought, well, wouldn't it be cool if it did? So I kind of invented this nerdy engineer, because I was a nerdy engineer. Now I'm not an engineer anymore, but he gets himself into all these James Bond kind of situations.
Well, here's the thing too about that.
Chris's
that
favorite show,
To be
Archer.
honest, I don't really remember the exact moment I decided to put in this dystopian future.
Here's the thing too. Years ago, I used to do contracting, and every other contractor would tell me, "Oh yeah, the hot wife. Oh yeah, the lonely housewife. You're working on the house." 14 years, man. 14 years I worked as a contractor. Never once. Never, ever, ever. It's like, yeah, it's a scenario. It's a ruse. It's a lie. But then again, here you go.
It's fun, but it's fun.
But it's fun. It's fun.
So anytime you get into it, you got to realize that anytime you get into a James Bond type thing, there's governments that run those spies and warriors, and they're the ones that they're being told what to do from the government. You know, you don't get your license to kill as James Bond unless your superiors give you that right.
Yeah, I'm a big believer when I'm writing that if you're going to use a cliche, turn it upside down.
Right.
That's
For
cool.
example, because otherwise cliches are boring. So, for example, there's a character in my book. He's a hippie, but he's not a communist like many hippies in the '60s, where this one's a hippie for the right. So similarly, you're absolutely right in the James Bond books, and Ian Fleming, who invented James Bond, said this. You know, Bond was a blunt instrument in the hands of government. So being me, I turned that upside down and came up with a Bond who's fighting against government.
Well, let's talk about that. Where are these people today? And where, one of the things, we're going to go on live tonight at midnight on the WNLM. And, one of the things I'm going to say, and Wayne and I talked about this a couple of days ago, where are the billionaires? The Ross Perot's. Remember Ross Perot, as crazy as he was in '79.
6 years for EDS,
Okay, listen to my story.
Ross Perot.
Listen to my story. Ross Perot sent a team of mercenaries to try to go get our hostages
Well, he
back.
didn't send them.
Whatever happened, it doesn't matter. The point I'm making is where are these billionaires today? These people have billions of dollars. They could buy a third world country and be done with it and still make billions more. They could hire these mercenaries. We have Americans in Iran, Americans hostages in various countries all around the world. Where are these people? Getting back to your book, it's like, how does fiction come into play with reality, and where are these people, and why does this shit not happen?
Well, I gotta say, it certainly is disappointing, that we have so many rich people like Bill Gates or Steve Jobs when he was still alive, or even Warren Buffett, who were practically characters out of Ayn Rand novels,
Right, yeah, the wealthy billionaires,
in their
right.
careers. And yet, in real life, they end up these big liberals who just make it so much harder for people who are in business to get things done. So, like you, I'm very disappointed. Where are the good billionaires?
Wayne's chomping at the bit here. Go ahead, Wayne.
My take on Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is they're a despicable couple that need to be imprisoned for their attempted communist takeover of our children. All right, they're spending $250 million to indoctrinate our children and turn them into serfs and slaves, and by way of Common Core curriculum, and they're going to make billions more on the technology to do it.
All right, so go on from there. Yeah, in your book, I'm sure you don't necessarily cover Common Core, but your characters in the book are in such a bizarro world situation that, yeah, do you cover this at all?
Um, Basically, there are two billionaires in the book, the good billionaire and the bad billionaire. The bad billionaire, any resemblance to George Soros?
I know you were going to say
We're
that.
not naming any names.
We're not naming any names, but George Soros is a Nazi.
And he's doing exactly this sort of thing, buying up movies. Doing exactly this sort of thing, buying up movie studios and trying to change the culture to the liberal point of view and indoctrinate people. It's at the point where he's got the professional wrestlers in the WWF using their trash talking skills to promote recycling.
Awesome analogy. What about the good billionaire?
I wish I had the book Technocracy with me. This is exactly what it is.
Kind of trash talking.
And what's your good billionaire like?
But I also show, a different sort of businesswoman who, made her money by coming up with a product that was better than the old product that people wanted. And she Gimbel's employer, she's Hero's employer, and she's the one who fights against the government and backs Gimbel up when push comes to shove, and hopefully that'll be an example for people. You have the Koch brother.
Yeah. Okay. I was just gonna say. Unfortunately, we were going to do an interview earlier tonight with a liberal Democrat who is very much against the Koch brothers. I'm not going to name her name. She wasn't able to come on earlier tonight. Yeah.
You have a connection. Slight connection problem.
Are you there?
I'm there, but I'm hearing you breaking up.
Yeah, we see the digitation in your screen there too.
So we had an earlier guest that was supposed to come on. She unfortunately could not come on. A liberal Democrat. We were going to talk about the Koch brothers, and she was going to talk about gerrymandering affecting elections and standing up against Medicaid expansion. I'm not going to get into the minutia of our interview because she wasn't able to come on earlier. But that's interesting that you mentioned the Koch brothers because, and we were talking about Soros earlier, is that nobody seems to bat an eyelash when the Soros organization, the Rockefellers, the Bilderbergs, Trilateral Commission,
the Gates.
Gates, everybody else gets on board to affect elections or to affect environmental change or to impose Agenda 21. Mike, you and I have been to many Tea Party meetings. You know what I'm talking about. No one bats an eyelash at that. Everyone thinks that it's wonderful, it's great, we're trying to save the planet. But when people like you and I, or the Tea Party, or anybody from the right tries to say, oh, wait a minute, no, we're going to put money into saying no, and we want gun rights and everything else, suddenly we're labeled as racist, homophobes, right-wing nutbags. I mean, we've got mud thrown at us left and right. Somehow it's okay for the left to pour billions of dollars into what they're doing, but it's not okay for the right to pour billions of dollars into what we promote. Go ahead.
Going with what he said.
I think you're absolutely right, and it's absolutely, and I think it's absolutely disgraceful the way that so many people on the right get demonized the way they do, just lies. Sarah Palin, for example, had a wonderful record as governor of Alaska the first 2 years.
Right. I agree.
And you listen to the media, you'd think that she's a nitwit.
Well, that's because of her association with John McCain.
There's this double standard in the media, and I think what we got to do is come up with our own media. And in the fiction business, that's what I'm trying to do with the Montiferro Press.
And we'll get it. I want to talk to you in about 2 seconds about your own book company here. But here's the thing. Listen, you and I could stand shoulder to shoulder and say, even to the right, yeah, there's too much money. You know I've been doing my candidate interviews. You know my show. You know everything I've been doing. And I see the big money, the stuff that's going on the right side. And it's squashing the grassroots movement. It's squashing the Tea Party movement. So, yeah, when people come to us and say, well...
An establishment.
Yeah, right, exactly, sir, exactly.
So
And so what I'm trying to say is that, you know, we can talk about everything that's going on the right side, and I would completely agree with... In fact, if anybody from the left ever came to me and said, well, the right does this and the right does that, I would say, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely correct on that. I completely disagree with how they're squashing the grassroots. I disagree with how they're squashing how candidates are getting out there. People like Mike and people like all the authors that I've interviewed, all the people that I've had on the show, the right is trying to squash these people. It's the same damn thing. But nobody bats an eyelash when the left side is throwing the money. Everyone says, it's all about the family and the children and the mothers and the environment, and it's all good and happy and unicorn farts and candy canes, but anytime the right wing gets on board and tries to do anything, yeah, we're demonized. All right, Wayne, go ahead.
So my take on this, from what you said, Chris, and what Mike has said, that people in our situation, okay, all of us broadcasters and you know, in social media, people, the grassroots people in this country, got to get together and build a coalition to, you know, I mean, because we're all doing this without much money at all right? Yeah. And we outnumber them. We outnumber them by probably 2 to 1. All right, because there are so many grassroots people out there that I've met over the last year and a half. All right, from working on question 1 in maths to working for Brad Wyatt for a representative and all the rest of that. The money doesn't need to be there to elect quality people that are going to go in there and effect change and abide by their oaths and stuff like that. And those are the people that we need to get out on social media, crush the mainstream media with their lies and their pandering to people like Soros and their payoffs and all the rest of that stuff. Cuomo is a liar, sitting there saying the other night that basically hate speech is not covered under the First Amendment, but it is.
Yeah.
You know, so we don't do that. We tell the truth.
The only thing to do in that situation is just keep telling the truth. You know, when they say it's not covered in the First Amendment, say, shut up on me. Read the First Amendment. Congress shall make no law, you know, infringing the freedom of speech. It doesn't say Congress shall make no law infringing the freedom of speech.
That's interesting.
Except for hate speech.
That's interesting that you say that.
It's a great advantage that our side has truth on our side.
That's interesting that you say that, because here we see in Baltimore, you're not allowed to use the word thug anymore. You can't say the word thug.
That's because it's the new N-word.
Okay. Oh, wait a minute. Did you just say the N-word?
The N-word.
Wait a minute. Mike.
The N-word.
Mike.
I said the N-word.
You're on the Meat and Potato Show. Did you say the N-word?
I said the N-word.
You're not allowed to say the N-word.
I don't care.
Did you mean the word
I don't
nigger?
care. This is social media. Did you
mean the word nigger? Nigger?
Yeah, well,
No,
I
this
might
is
as
the
well
Meat
have
and
said I might
Potato
have,
Show.
according
This is
to
what
what's
I'm
his
saying,
name,
Mike.
according
This
to
is
what's
what
his
I'm
name,
saying.
saying nigger is nigger.
Here we go. This is what I'm saying. You're not allowed to say things. You're not allowed to say thug, and we just said the word nigger. And this is it. This is it. See? This is it. Where I can even see you pulling back. I can see you. It's like, wow. What is wrong with this country that we can't see things and say things as they really are anymore?
think the only response to people who tell you can't say something is to say it over and over again. It's the exact same thing with this Muhammad cartoon drawing concept.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for bringing that point up to light.
Yeah,
Because
really.
I just heard a major controversy
and that
on
woman
that on the
Geller,
radio.
she was on Fox News the other night, and even the Fox News announcer was telling her, well, shouldn't you have done this, and shouldn't you have done this? And she stuck to her guns. It's like, no.
And then she was
No.
on Hannity.
In fact,
she was on Hannity, and Hannity traded out and had some UK world-renowned cleric from the UK sit there and literally threaten her life on national, on
and here's the
international
thing.
TV.
Here's the thing. Here's what I call it. I call it the Larry Flint model. Larry Flint, and if you remember, Flint versus the USA. Larry Flint even said when he came out of that courtroom and the Supreme Court actually supported him and defended his right to make that cartoon about, Jerry Falwell, and he came out, he said to the press, he says, we must always remember to be offended. We need to be offended from time to time to understand how important our First Amendment is. And I'm not talking about just being offended or being pissed off, but just, look at the Jesus Christ thing in the bottle of piss. Yes, the Christians. Oh, I know, that's Christians, so who cares about that crap? But yeah, draw a picture of Muhammad, and the entire world loses their minds.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's insane.
Well, how far is your book?
George Will gave a speech. So I think you're breaking up again.
Yes, a little.
It might help if you turn off your picture, so that can you do that so that we're not using as much bandwidth for video?
Yeah, that would probably be a good idea.
If I turn off my picture?
Because
you're doing fine. You're
turn
fine.
Off the TV.
I'm fine.
How far in depth to these things does your book go?
You're fine.
Mike,
You're fine.
How far in depth to
right.
these different things does your book go, or is it fiction fact, or is it 100% fiction?
Well,
because most people, most writers
that's
can't do that.
It's a very rich topic of conversation, but one thing I want to point out is something that George Will said in a speech a couple weeks ago. When somebody says to you that what you're saying or what you're doing offends them, the correct response is to say as politely as you can, I don't care. And if they say you hurt their feelings, well, he told a story about General George Marshall and how somebody once asked him, how do you feel about such and such a program? And his response was, sir, I reserve my feelings for Mrs. Marshall.
I totally agree with that situation, and I support General James Mattis.
When somebody claims they're offended. And I think what Pam Geller did was a great service, because she got on this guy on the Fox News on the Hannity show, this guy Anjem Chowdhury, and she forced his hand, she forced him to show him what kind of person that he is, that he's, to coin a phrase, a thug,
Right.
that he wants to murder anyone who doesn't agree with him, and she made him say it on the air. The best part of that interview was when he kept interrupting her, and she interrupted back and said, look, I know you're used to stepping on women, but you're not going to do it with this one.
Okay.
It's-
I have a little
Go
thing.
ahead,
You mentioned one General Marshall, and a quote from him, and I have been a staunch supporter of retired General James Mad Dog Mattis, because he.
Nope. We lost him.
We
We lost
still there?
Are you still there?
I'm back.
Okay, yeah, you're still there. We just lost the
there?
video. Yes, we're still here. I support General James Mad Dog Mattis because he said, "Be polite be professional, but have a plan to kill everybody in the room. And the United States of America needs a leader that's led Marines, led men into battle over and over again under several different presidents. I believe the only way to get back to that is to have a commander-in-chief who knows what war is all about, who knows what all these crises and conflicts is all about, and who supports the American people and the United States Constitution and has taken that oath very seriously, and along with hopefully
No,
every
I
warrior
agree.
that we
You know, I
have.
think you need people in the White House who have leadership experience, not necessarily on a battlefield, but certainly, somebody that if they haven't run a battalion, has run a city or a state or a business. I think one of the problems with our present president is that he never did that. And, and this
He hasn't
causes
worked a
him
day in his life.
problems. He has a lot of disputes. I think this is why he has so much trouble with Congress. He's never been in a position before where he had to negotiate anything.
Oh, I totally agree. Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Bubba Clinton, not one of them has ever worked a day in their entire lives. They've had everything handed to them on a silver platter. Same with John Forbes Kerry. John Forbes Hanoi Kerry, because he's one of the biggest traitors that this country ever produced. And both Chris and I grew up right here in the communist poverty of Massachusetts, and we've listened to him for like the last 40 years. When
Yeah,
he
we
came back
grew
from
up under
Vietnam,
that. We know
came
that
back from
liberal.
Vietnam
I'll
and
tell you,
lied his way through
Kerry
the.
gets no respect. Kerry gets no respect in the rest of the world. I read the Arab Twitter feed sometimes. I read a little bit of Arabic if I can go slowly. And when he was on,
Did we lose him?
Did we lose you?
I think we lost him.
Mike?
Mike, you there? Well, anyway. Well, there you go. That's Mike Isenberg. Try to get him back.
Yeah, we'll try to
See
get
if
him
we can
back.
get a second half of the video.
Oh, there we go.
There he is.
There we go.
On the 774.
There you go, Mike. No, we can hear you.
We can hear you now.
Yeah.
It's just a video. The video keeps cutting out.
You're on.
You on? Keep going with what we were saying, if you can.
Oh, just keep going?
Yes,
Okay.
keep going. You're fine.
Yeah, you're fine.
All right. So anyway, yeah, they constantly on people in other parts of the world are making fun of John Kerry.
As well they should. As well they should. And he should be hang his head
and
in
when you
shame.
see, here's the thing too, Mike. Again, even in your book, even though it's a fictional book, and again, getting back to the books that I've read that I mentioned, audiences, readers, they see this. They see these. Are you there? Oh, we lost him again. Well, anyway.
Well,